So this is for Chapter 3, Basin Setting. There's three main categories within basin setting. We have the hydrogeological conceptual model, which isn't an actual groundwater model. It's more what type of soils do you have in the area, historical groundwater flow, and then we have current and historical groundwater conditions, looking at historical data and current data regarding water level, groundwater quality, storage change, and it also goes into what monitoring programs currently and historically have existed within the area. Because where possible, we use what's already being done. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if there's an entity already monitoring water level, we're going to utilize their data. And then the third main category within basin setting is the water budget. So the majority of this presentation will be on the water budget. I do have a couple graphs to show you of water level. So the first one is historical water conditions in spring of 1997. So all the green dots are the wells used to create this contour set, and all the blue lines is the groundwater elevation contours. So as you can see towards the north, the water level is higher. The higher numbers, so the 120 and 130 is elevation above mean sea level. So those water levels are higher than the southern portion of MAGSA where you see the 0 and the 20. So, and then the arrows show the groundwater flow within the GSA. And towards the southwest portion of the McMullen area GSA, you have Kona Depression. So that's the lowest water level in the GSA, and that's where the majority of the water flows to. And as you can see, there's water coming from the east side or North Kings GSA flowing into MAGSA, and also from James ID. But the Kona Depression is between McMullen area GSA and North Fork Kings GSA. So this is for 97. This next map is current water conditions. So the most recent data we had at the time of creating this map is 2017. As you can see, the southwest portion has moved a little bit, but the Kona Depression is generally still in the same area. The higher water levels are still to the north by the river, but there's a few more lines, so the groundwater gradient is a little bit steeper. But in the Kona Depression on 1997 was 0.
Muted. Unmuted.
Okay. So these next couple maps are still of the water level in the area. These are heat maps. The white area is 0 feet of change from 1997 to 2011. This is what the years this map shows the change between. The light blue is about 10 to 20 feet positive, so that means the water level has come back up and has rebounded. The yellow is about 10 to 20 feet, negative 10 to negative 20 feet, so the groundwater level has dropped 10 to 20 feet over this time frame. And the red is about 30 to 40 feet. So towards the north and the east, looks like the water level rebounds a little bit, and towards the west and the southwest is where the water level has dropped. This one is a year later, so the change from 1997 to 2012. Still a little bit of rebound in the north to the east, and then a little bit redder, so about 40 to 50 feet is the dark, deep red towards the west and towards the southwest. Those hasn't changed, it's just the water levels dropped even more since 2011. This one, 1997 to 2013. Still a little bit of rebound towards the northeast, but as you can see, the dark red areas are growing towards the west and towards the southwest. So more groundwater decline in 2013. And just for context, the drought was from 2012 to 2016. So we're going into some dry years where we didn't have as much rainfall. from 1997 to 2016, there's a lot of red. So this is the end of the drought. We haven't had much recharge or rainfall to rebound those water levels. But the deepest red areas are towards the west between James and McMullen, and to the southwest. Can people not hear me?
Yeah, we're having sound is muffled. Is anyone else having trouble with the sound? Is there an improvement?
Well, I'll start over on this map. Hopefully you guys can hear me a little bit better. So this shows the water level change from 1997 to 2016. And 2016 is the end of the drought. So there's been a lot of groundwater pumping. The water levels declined as indicated by the greater area of red and the greater area of the dark red. And the majority of the water level decline is on the western border between McMullen and James, and towards the south between McMullen and North Fork Kings GSA.
And if I could interject just a little bit here, as bad as that heat map may look, this is pretty typical for the end of a sustained drought period, because the water supply just simply hasn't been there in surface supply. And so the insurance policy of groundwater has been utilized to maintain operations. There will be additional recovery out of the 2017 and 2019 years, clearly, and we'll hopefully get a better picture of the effects of that as we go forward. But we have planned for droughts in the GSP, and in our sustainability criteria are definitely been built around the fact that there will be additional time of drought during the next 20-year period of time. So as red as it may look, not necessarily ringing the gong of alarm, but certainly a small bell of alarm in the background, just to make sure that we're aware that drought conditions are not favored for this basin.
Any questions before we move on to the water budget?
Looks like there's no questions.
Okay, so the remainder of this session is going to be over the water budget. To start, we have the overdraft mitigation target. So the storage change for the area is 16,000 acre feet per year. There's also groundwater inflow, so groundwater flowing in from other GSAs such as North Kings. There's 91,700 acre feet of groundwater inflow, and we subtracted out historical groundwater inflow. There's always been a little bit of groundwater into the area, so since we've had that historically, we subtracted that out of the overdraft mitigation target. So we subtracted out 16,600 acre feet to reach an overdraft mitigation target of 91,100 acre feet per year. So that 91,100 acre feet per year is how much we want to reduce the overdraft by within the McMullen area GSA. So starting at the beginning of the water budget, we first look at what supplies there are. So we have some surface water coming into the area of 1,900 acre feet. There's also groundwater pumping that's used for irrigation. So this is how much is pumped out of the ground using some crop ET information, 290,200 acre feet. And there's also precipitation, how much rainfall is in the area, of 92,700 feet. And there's lots of line items. I'm just going to hit the highlights. If you have questions, we can go over it after I've gone through the water budget. We also have 2,000 acre feet of spill inflows. Next step for the water budget is to look at the demand side. So what is being used? We have the ET information for the crops that is met by applied water of 232,000 acre feet. And then we also have evapotranspiration that is met through effective precipitation. So how much of the rainfall is being utilized by the crops of 52,000 acre feet. And then we have a little bit for municipal and industrial. We have the community of Basin City. Next step we looked at was the groundwater recharge. So we have the groundwater inflow, how much groundwater is entering the McMullen area GSA from outside the boundaries of 153,000 acre feet. And then there's some deep percolation of irrigation water. So that's how much water reaches the groundwater aquifer. So if the crops are over irrigated, that's the amount that recharges the groundwater of 61,700 acre feet. And then same thing for precipitation, the amount of precipitation that isn't used or evaporated that makes it to the groundwater is 8,800 acre feet. And then we also have local streams and rivers for recharge. We have the San Joaquin River along the northern boundary of the McMullen area GSA. We also have non-recoverable losses. So for precipitation, how much evaporates or runs off and isn't either beneficially used by crops or doesn't recharge the groundwater of 31,900 acre feet. And we also have groundwater export. So the 18,500 acre feet is from the James ID well field. So that's how much they pump and export out of the McMullen area GSA. So based off of the water budget we just went through, the MAGSA pumping is 292,800 acre feet. We have 18,500 acre feet per year of groundwater export, and the groundwater demand, total groundwater demand is 311,300 acre feet. Now the overdraft mitigation target is 91,100 acre feet, so we subtracted the overdraft mitigation target from the total groundwater demand to get the MAGSA sustainable yield of 220,300 acre feet. So that's the demand number to be sustainable. So one last slide in this session, just to give a magnitude of numbers. So for the MAGSA GSA, we want to mitigate 10% of the overdraft in the first 5 years. So between 2020 and 2025, we want to reduce the overdraft by 10%, which equals about 9,100 acre feet. We want to, in the next 5 years, so from 2025 to 2030, we want to reduce it 20% more, or a cumulative amount of 30%. And that would equal 18,220 in that 5 years, or cumulatively by 2030 reduce the overdraft by 27,330 acre feet. The next 5 years, from 2030 to 2035, we want to address an additional 30%, or cumulatively 60% of the overdraft, which for those 5 years would be 27,330 acre feet, and cumulatively 54,660. And then finally, the last 5 years, from 2035 to 2040, reduce the overdraft by that final 40%, or 36,440 acre feet. So by 2040, reduce 100% of the overdraft in 20 years.
I think important to note there is this is a metered reduction. We're going to, again, being redundant a little bit, but trying to make a point, is that we're going to focus our efforts on water efficiencies, water imports, and better water management for the early portion of that, to try to reduce that overdraft number. And we're hopeful that some of the projects that we're able to approve and install, and additional conveyance, et cetera, will give us more options. But the reality is that when we get to the 2030 to 2040 10 years, that we may face some of the more drastic reductions necessary to meet our goals by 2040. But it's definitely not going to happen overnight. And if our data is good, and if we can take that data and turn it into really effective management, then hopefully we'll soften the blow of the 91,000 to the maximum extent possible before 2040.
Do we have any questions on the water budget? No.
No.
All right, we have our next live poll. So would you be willing to share your groundwater levels to support better groundwater management?
Okay, so live poll.
Oh, you
You
gotta
ready?
People already voting? Wow.
Got this. Locked in.
What does share mean? Did you see the question? There was a question. What does share mean?
Oh,
As you're voting, and maybe I can add a little texture to this question. Share means many people, there may be as many as 1,000 well sites within MAGSA, and obviously a manager's goal would be to have 100% participation of all of those wells with elevation data and pumping data so we can get maximum management out of it. But the reality is that we're going to need to have the cooperation of our landowner stakeholders. And so we'll be asking each of you to allow for us to do some of that on your wells and try to sharpen our data. The biggest question generally is privacy, and so that we consider that data on individual landowners to be their private information, and we will do everything that's legally possible to protect that private data to the extent we can, and hopefully that'll be sufficient insurance for the individual landowner, not to make them feel like somebody's going to come roaring in and criticize them for their operations. So that's what we're asking is, would you be willing to allow us to have elevation and pumping data from your individual wells so we can get a better on-the-ground look at groundwater conditions?
Yeah, the only information that's going to be submitted to the Department of Water Resources are the wells within the monitoring network. So in this next session, I'll show maps of what wells we're including for water level and groundwater quality. So those are the only wells that the data will be submitted to the Department of Water Resources. So a lot of this information from individual landowners is for data gathering for us to better understand what's going on within MAGSA, and it'll stay in the MAGSA GSA, unless it's one of those monitoring network wells.
Everybody got their votes in, it looks like. So it's a definite maybe for some and yes for others, but it doesn't look like there's a get off my property or I'll shoot you answer, which is a good thing.
all right. With that, we're going to move on from the live poll. Oh, we have a question in the chat. Will the GSA require all wells to be metered and yearly extraction reports sent in? If not, how will budgets or restrictions be accurately measured?
Great question. Very intuitive. There's a basic entrepreneurial spirit of trying to keep your data to yourself. I get that. The answer to the question probably will lend itself to a yes sooner rather than later. And there's more than one reason for metering. The main reason I've kind of indicated before is to kind of protect ourselves. It's our insurance policy. It's the way we're going to defend the actual numbers that we gather relative to our pumping, rather than using broad estimates. We're going to have real data, and of course real data is the facts, and the facts are what prevails. The second thing is that we're going to probably be looking at a water marketing program. And in order to market water between even landowners within MAGSA, as a basic theory, you have to measure what you're pumping in order to know what you can sell or what you can market. So the market itself will be built on the requirement of a base metering program in order to make it work. So that's really, really important as well. And of course, again, overall management will be built on real-time facts and data. And yes, metering is the only way to actually know how much water is actually being extracted from the GSA. And we will be moving towards that as soon as we can. You'll see in some of the projects and some of our objectives here, we'll probably have some incentives to try to encourage people to do that sooner rather than later, because as soon as I'm able to get better data, I'm able to argue much more aggressively, proactively for water management within MAGSA.